Hi and welcome to our first guest episode. Our first guest is Beth Salt, who is an occupational therapist. We talk generally about the events of 2020 and consider the impact on work-life balance. We hope you enjoy it. Hi Beth, thank you for being our first guest in this makeshift studio during yet another lockdown of 2020. Just wanted to sort of have a chat with you about how you've experienced this year, what your kind of role is, how that kind of looked pre-2020, how it feels now, and maybe how you feel it'll look once all this is sort of passed and we get back to some form of normality, whatever that might look like. Would you be able to introduce yourself, what it is you do,
Hi, thanks for having me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an occupational therapist by background, and so it's been quite different this year. I was previously doing quite a lot of travel and what have you, but now, for the majority of 2020 now, I've been working from home, or at least more remotely, where we can. So it's been quite a big shift for me particularly, but I've also seen the shift for a lot of other people, and I think like every situation, it's got pros and cons, hasn't it? And for some people it will be very difficult, and for some people it'll be quite a nice relief from being all over the place and having to have a bit of an enforced break, I guess, from travelling around, maybe.
Yeah. So, an occupational therapist, that's a lot of people have heard of occupational health. What exactly is the role of an occupational therapist, and what would a typical day or a typical week look like for you?
I think it's one of those professions that maybe people don't. It's maybe not considered to be quite so mainstream, although it is becoming more mainstream now, I think.
Yeah.
People tend to confuse it with occupational health, but I'm not going to be the one assessing you for being okay to go back to work after a period of illness or injury, or
right.
That's not necessarily what I do.
Okay.
When we talk about occupations, we look at all occupations throughout the day. It's not work focused. That can be the focus, but it's about anything you do in your daily life being an occupation.
Right.
So this has been quite an interesting period if we're going to look at it objectively, just because a lot of the changes that have taken place over this year have had an impact on people's occupations, not just from a work perspective, but one of the things that we look at is work-life balance, and just balance in general, really. And when you're in a position where you're denied the ability to do certain things, however necessary it might be, that does create a shift in the balance of people's lives. Work-life balance being only one of them.
Right. So it's it's not about people's occupation per se. It's about people how people use their time. The sort of on a day-to-day basis, how they create balance in life, and how people may live their best lives in a way.
And looking at how I always consider the role to be about sort of being a bit of a problem solver, really. And not just problem solving, but looking at how we use our own strengths to benefit us in areas that we find a bit more tricky.
Right.
So for me, working more remotely, I've had to sort of generate a different routine to make sure that I'm able to function at the level I was functioning at with all the distractions of just being at home.
Yes.
So I've found it really useful to get up, have a shower, put makeup on in the same way that I would if I was going to the office.
Yeah, right.
Because it puts me in the work mindset.
Yeah.
Because I've kept that part of my daily routine. And that's, I think there's a lot of people who maybe haven't been set up for working from home, and so have been working from the couch or the dining room table.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I've found useful is creating a workspace where I can be in that moment. I'm in work mode.
Yeah.
I'm in the right frame of mind, and then that's an area that I can shut down at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And allow myself to switch back into home mode. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people are missing, because they don't necessarily have the ability to do that, or they have additional distractions at home.
Yeah.
That impact on their ability to do that.
Yeah.
Which I imagine has been really difficult for a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah. I think the people that would have been able to transition into this period of enforced homeworking, the people that have done it through choice or through if their job looked like that pre-2020, they will have been able to almost practice. They would have used sort of trial and error and worked out how best to do it. Whereas this year, when it's been sort of forced upon people on top of the stresses of being within a global pandemic, and then obviously the schools are shutting, and so people have had childcare issues and things like that. It's it would have been difficult. You're at the advantage that I take it you've done a bit of sort of homeworking before, but also you appreciate the work-life balance element, so you can sort of bring in your own personal experience plus sort of professional experience as well, I guess.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've sort of always considered is I have done a bit of homeworking in the past, but not in a sort of structured way. It's not been enforced. It's been a bit of a ad hoc. Like I've got a large amount of admin to catch up on, and so being out of the office environment without the distractions of other people, it's been easier to do that. But I think now, having to get into that new way of life, it's just made me realise that one of the reasons I feel that we all enjoy our home life is because we're coming back to it from an office.
Yeah.
And so having to have your work life and your home life in the same building is something that I think will impact on people in different ways. And that's what I mean when we look at balance, it's not just balance about work life, it's just balance of all those things that you enjoy doing or things that you have to do. But it has kind of demonstrated the importance of working, I guess. For me, it's not just something that you do because you need to pay the bills, or I mean, I have the luxury of having a job that I love, which is helpful anyway. But if you think about all of those elements being combined, work, home, family, leisure activities, anything that you do, if it's all within the same four walls, there is a risk of blurring those boundaries a little bit. And I think lots of people have either found that it's been very difficult to work from home in order to get into that work mindset because there's other distractions. It might, even if it's just pets or you know, there's been loads of things on social media, hasn't there, with people showing on the Zoom calls that the cat's come and joined in, or or whatever. And so those sorts of distractions, or even feeling because I'm at home, maybe I should be putting a load of washing in, or I should be you know, running the hoover around in my lunch break.
Right.
You know, all of those things, if you're outside of the home environment, then you don't feel the pressure of having to do them now. They're things that you do in the evening or at the weekend, or when you're off. And I think there's potentially been the risk that people are overestimating what they should be achieving. And so I think there's probably a lot of people who are finding, well, because I'm at home, I might as well turn the computer on now and just work a bit later, because I would be travelling at this time anyway. And actually that travel time in itself, I find is a good time to just put some order to your thoughts. And so if you're then absorbing that, what would be travel time, into, oh, I feel like I should be putting the computer on, you know, that's not necessarily, it might be beneficial for some people, because it's just like, actually I feel much more content because ordinarily there aren't enough hours in the day, and I feel like I've achieved more, and that's great, because then that allows me to switch off at a reasonable time in the evening. But I think it is much more difficult to find that balance without having a place to go and do your work and be in work mode. There's
I mean, it's been blurred for quite a while, hasn't it, really? I guess since the sort of mid-2000s, when people started getting Blackberries and you could pick up your email on your phone. So people might be looking at their emails on the commute into the office, or just middle of the night even. But this actually working from home, doing Zoom calls, doing your admin, everything, it just really creates even more of a blur, doesn't it? I guess when it was just picking up emails on your phone, you could, if you had a work phone, you could actually just put that away at a certain time. But I guess now there's, with people doing Zoom calls or Teams or whatever, Skype, anything like that, there's almost like an invasion, possibly, where you've got your boss is in your living room, you know, or your employees. I think it's something that there are definite advantages to it, I think.
If nothing else, it makes you keep on top of the housework, because everyone can see.
Right.
Everyone can see into your living room.
Yeah. But and also, you know, if you're working from home, you could attend an appointment, a personal appointment, in the middle of the day. Whereas if you were actually in the office, you might have to sort of book a bit of time off for that. But if you start work a little bit earlier from your living room or your spare room or your office setup at home, that wouldn't be a problem. But it feels like people have to be even more mindful of this sort of crossover, because just for mental health issues, if nothing else, people may have found potentially that they've become more productive. That could be a novelty thing. Longer term, I guess there could be some issues with people just burning themselves out in their own homes, potentially. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's something that I always, on a personal level, try to strive to achieve, is that continued work-life balance. And part of that is about getting into a good morning routine, keeping keeping it as similar to going into the office as it was, but also because I've decided that time that I would have spent travelling, using it to go for a walk, like before the workday starts.
Right.
I've found that beneficial just in terms of, general health and well-being as well. And that's become part of my morning routine, which is something that I didn't have the opportunity for before. And so that's really benefited me, but I think that's because I was sort of determined to go into it thinking, okay, I need to make sure I keep this balance, because otherwise I'm either going to be completely burnt out or not achieving what I need to achieve. And so I think I probably work more, not work harder, but I'm able to work smarter.
Right.
I think from home, because I've been able to give myself some boundaries, really. Yeah. And that's been really helpful. And I think it's just, a lot of what I would look at in a work capacity is the impact of environment. And it's interesting that you mentioned about people's mental health, because you would think, wouldn't you, that actually being at home and being able to be surrounded by your own things would improve mental health, but that's not always the case. Sometimes you need to have different zones for different areas of your life. For me particularly, that's what I find. And it can be easy to slip into sort of lifestyle choices that don't necessarily benefit you. Right. And then if you're not well, and you're not happy and content and have that balance, then ultimately it's very difficult to provide the level of professionalism that you would want to. Maybe, that's just me personally. Yeah.
So you're in terms of sort of managing or curating your day, you have actually found some real advantages to working from home, and it sounds like you have a good level of autonomy over the type of work that you can do during a day as well. I guess that's quite unique to where you are in your career or within your company, but not everyone would actually have that. People who are just starting out, say for instance, if they're sort of just starting out on their sort of career, that I imagine that would be a little bit tougher. Do you have any sort of thoughts on that, or?
I don't really know necessarily about starting out in a career. From when, if you first qualified and it was your first job, for example. I've not necessarily had that experience, but we have welcomed new team members into work who we've met via video calls. Right. And that's been, I think organisations are just having to get used to that now. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know how it would feel for the people coming into a big team, particularly, without that face-to-face meet and greet. It's they're the things. I think the social, not even necessarily social side of things, but you want to go into work and feel that you know your colleagues to a certain extent. I think that helps with people's comfort levels. It helps with openness and transparency within organisations, and I think those organisations who have embraced the technology, that's been an easier segue into this new way of working, I think. I imagine it's been very difficult for for organisations who haven't had that at their fingertips, and they've had to not only develop those ways of working but then incorporate them at the same time.
Yeah.
You know, that's probably quite a difficult transition to make, really.
Yeah. Yeah, that on the sort of new starters thing, that I mean, many offices are kind of set up to create sort of social zones, even if it's just the sort of kitchen sort of breakout areas, just for informal sort of meetups, or you know, just touching down, and just to sort of run over a project or review something. But there is actually just that day-to-day thing, isn't there? Just like making a brew for everyone on your pod, that type of thing. It's just that sort of it creates that sort of social sort of knitting that you can't really get via screens, I guess. So it's
yeah, but I think you know, as things are at the moment, that's the only way that you're able to build those connections. And there's people that I feel I know better now, because it's almost like easier to just pick up the phone because everyone's picking up the phone. So there's that sort of, it almost feels like you're just walking over to someone's desk and just saying, oh, well, while I've got you, can I just have a quick kind of 5 minutes to just chat about this?
People are more accessible now, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so. I've certainly experienced that. And I think as long as that doesn't get to a point where there's an expectation to be accessible all of the time, then that's a good thing, I think. Yeah, like I said earlier on, there's pros and cons to any situation, isn't there? And I think it's all about it's about making sure that you do have boundaries within your life. Yeah. But again, it depends on your industry as well, doesn't it? As to how easy it is to set those boundaries, and what your role is within that. But there's always going to be times as well where you want to go to a place of work. Yeah. And I think you can't have one answer that suits everybody. Yeah. And so some people may have really benefited from working from home, but I think for the vast majority, as you said, where they want to keep their family life separate, or need to keep their family life separate because of the demand of their job role, you know, we want people to feel successful in all areas of their life, and not feel like some part of their life is getting a bit of a raw deal. Yeah. And I guess, you know, just 2020 in general, people have been deprived of the opportunity to do a lot of the things they would ordinarily do. Holidays, days out, weddings, whatever it might be, and not, when I say deprived, I don't mean sort of maliciously, just it's been a necessary situation. Yeah. But even just, you know, I'm not personally one of those people who's always here, there and everywhere, but having experienced a little bit of annual leave during the lockdown and realising the impact of having that spontaneity taken away, you know, that had more impact than I thought it would. Right.
So annual leave, what did you do? Because obviously you couldn't go anywhere, I take it. There was a local lockdown or some enforcement at the time.
Yeah, there were restrictions in place, and it suddenly, I don't know, because I wouldn't ordinarily plan a lot in. If I had some time off, I would just want to see where each day took me. But that spontaneity being gone meant that not an awful lot happened, really. And then I really did appreciate the benefits of work more so than just, you know, having income and those sorts of things. I just really appreciated the necessity of having that purpose.
Right. So like the both the actual time off was appreciated more potentially, and then also having the role to go back to it, you had a different perspective because
I felt a bit conflicted,
right,
in a way, because
you're still in the same building.
Exactly.
In your own home.
And so my workspace that I've set up so that it is a targeted area, I could still see that, and there was because I really enjoy my job, there was that bit of draw to, should I just check my emails, should I just check in and see how things are going,
but it was even more important to not do that.
I guess so. I mean, I think for some people there's comfort in having at your fingertips the ability to just keep an eye out for anything that's going on. Because I think sometimes the unknown is more stressful than just keeping your eye on your emails and what have you.
Yeah, going on holiday and coming back to 800 emails in your inbox.
Yeah,
that's a stress. Without doubt.
Yeah. And so I guess the remote working probably means that whether people go back into the office when all this is less of an acute issue or not, it might be that some of those elements stay anyway, so that people can manage that kind of anxiety of, what am I going into on Monday morning? Because however functional a business is, if you're in a meaningful job, then there's things that you want to keep on top of, aren't there? And so I guess that's going to be something that it'd be interesting to see how this translates when people go back into the office, and how that improved connectivity translates back into the office environment. And it might be that actually it has a sort of existential impact on lots of things, and even just like people still using the technology from the office. A lot of meetings are held, you go here, you go there, they come here, they come whatever, and so it might be that people embrace this technology, and they I've heard about sort of Zoom rooms and things within offices, and I think there's probably going to be quite a shift in how people work more flexibly, get a balance of remote working and office life, and it will be interesting to see the shift.
I think there's definitely we've been very lucky that during this lockdown, during this whole period, we have got excellent tech. Like everyone that's got a smartphone more or less can be on Zoom or other platforms. There's the cloud-based storage technology, which a lot of businesses are really and employees are really thankful for, because they can carry on functioning. I mean, it's very difficult to put a general sort of opinion on the whole thing, because every industry and every company within the different industries are nuanced, aren't they? So it's just interesting to look at everything from a sort of a general perspective. But on the technology thing, there's been a lot of talk over the recent years about people actually switching back to flip phones because they just can't. They just find all the tech on their smartphones just too much, and that's just on a personal level. They just their screen time is just kind of crazy. That and that's sort of having knock-on effects for them. I wonder whether people will almost like downgrade their tech in their homes just to shut off. Even I don't know.
I don't know, because it just comes back to that balance again. If you've spent the day looking at a screen for work purposes, then would you decide that you wanted to do away with your personal screens, your social media, to compensate for that? Possibly not. People might want to keep their own smartphones with their own personal social media and all of that kind of stuff, because actually it might feel too much like, in order to make way for the technology that you experience through work, giving up my own might be too much of a I don't know.
I mean, I'm in no way an expert, but I know that too much screen time is bad for you. The amount of blue light can mess with people's circadian rhythms, etc. So I mean that it would be interesting to know what people's average screen times are this year, if they're having to do most of their work on a screen during the day, where they might be spending 8 hours on a screen 9 to 5, whereas that could be significantly more than it was when they were working in offices and not home working. And then when the working day, in inverted commas, finishes, people are still using their screens in the same way that they were when they were in offices. That people's exposure to screens must be quite a bit higher this year, I imagine. Yeah,
I don't know, because I don't know enough about it to know whether the people who are experiencing a lot of screen time at home would be experiencing less screen time if things were quote unquote back to normal.
It's very difficult to measure, isn't it? It's just an observation.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine the people who are able to do their job from home, from a screen, are probably the kind of roles that were able to be conducted in that way anyway. So
true.
I don't know.
Yeah. So, moving forward, how do you? I mean, I don't think I asked you what a sort of typical day or week would have looked like, and how it will look like in your view moving forward. I believe you did quite a lot of travelling, because you a lot of sort of field work. You would go and
I think
visit people in their homes or
I mean, there was lots of travel. I think a lot of that has been able to be mitigated quite well, really. And like I say, having embraced technology, I've managed to achieve the same sort of functionality. Obviously, it's nice to go and see people face to face. That human contact is really important. And so I hope that moving forward, there's a kind of middle ground that can be found, because I think in terms of my own work-life balance, I was spending a lot of time in the car.
Right. In
terms of physical health and stuff. I didn't have time to sort of dedicate to my own self-care, really.
Right.
In the way that I wanted to. So I think if it can settle into some sort of middle ground, that would be preferable for me. It's nice to have a day out the house.
Yeah.
Sometimes, but if it's every day, I don't know.
So again, it's the balance. You were spending a lot of time in the car, on the motorway, service stations.
Yeah.
Now you're not really doing much of that. It's mainly at home, but then it's then balancing that, and it's just finding the right balance.
Yeah. And I do think I'm a firm believer that it is all about balance. Yeah. We need to find balance in our lives, in our minds, in our in our diet, all of those things. Being in a position where you're denied the majority of the things that benefit you is not good. But equally, you know, one of the reasons we appreciate our leisure pursuits is because it's offset by things that we do because we have to, even if it's the housework.
Yeah.
know. So right. So yeah, I do think it is about finding that balance, and not just for people as individuals, but for organisations as well.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting on the diet thing as well. You mentioned while you're out on the road a lot, there's not many sort of healthy food options, I guess, in the service stations, and just
no, really.
So that's another advantage from working from home, I guess, is that you can actually cook a nice healthy lunch.
Yeah, but again, I think, you know, you can still do that. It's a choice that you make, isn't it? Not to prepare something to take into work and decide, I'll just wing it and go to a cafe or go to stop at the services.
Yeah.
And this has given an opportunity to sort of reprioritise, I guess, because if I was on the road for however many hours a week, hours a day on top of my working day, I might not consider it to be... I think the position I was in is I didn't consider it to be a priority to spend the little time I had at home prepping meals.
Right.
And so now actually, if I found that happy medium, I might reprioritise things like that and make sure that I was a bit more prepared or had some better ideas at least for what I could eat on the hop, as it were. But I think it's probably made a lot of people consider what their priorities are. How much do they really need some of the aspects of their lifestyle that they had before, and those things that they felt that they really didn't need, like going into the office and all of that, probably on reflection are now reprioritising that and thinking, actually I do need that. I need that human contact. I need to go in and have a chat with somebody while I'm brewing up, and
I mean, I think a lot of people would have been under a lot of stress collectively. The whole of society has been. I mean, it being in a global pandemic, and then I guess if there's obviously sort of stresses over job security. However, the people that have managed to carry on working from home, because they haven't had potentially the stresses of job security, they have had that time to reflect and have a look at their whole work-life balance, and as you say, their priorities, whether they be health, mind, body, spirit, occupation. Hopefully there can be some benefits that have come out of this period.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be, obviously it's been such a catastrophic event for so many people. It will be difficult to see the positives initially, maybe.
Absolutely.
But if it can be, if those positives can be seen, however small they may be, and it might give us an opportunity to play to people's strengths more and think about being more creative and moving forward and evolving in that sense. That will be a benefit that comes out of an otherwise very difficult situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think that's a good note to end on. And I know that you've got other Zoom calls, I imagine, and other appointments today. So thank you very much for being our first guest. And
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Not at all, and you're welcome back at any time. It'd be great to chat further about these types of things. So thank you again.
Okay, thank you.